Hey everybody, welcome back to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, learningtomix.com, and here on my YouTube channel. And in this video, I want to show you briefly my overview of my universal audio satellite system and show you how my rig is kind of set up. And then more importantly, answer a question that I get asked about an awful lot. And that is for people that are new to universal audio or thinking about purchasing some of their hardware, they always want to ask, well, how big of a system do they have to get? How many plugins can you put in a session on the system that they intend to purchase? And so I want to try to clarify that a little bit for you, so it's a little bit more clear, because I get this question an awful lot. So we're going to take a look at that today and show you kind of the different plugins and some of the differences in DSP usage and those kinds of things. But before we get to that, if you like what you see in this video, hit that subscribe button, like and subscribe. It really helps me out. I really appreciate it. Also go out to facebook.com/homerecordingmadeeasy and follow me there. And for more tips, tricks, concepts, and training around all aspects of home recording, go to homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Check out all of my training courses there. They'll help you make better mixes in your home studio, I promise. And also go out to learningtomix.com and check out what I have going on over there with my good buddy and colleague Pete Woj from mixbetternow.com. We have a great mixing training membership website that I know you're going to dig. Go check it out. We dive deep into plugins and universal audio, and we mix multi-track sessions every month. It's fun, fun, fun. Go check it out. So now let's head on over into Studio One. Let's take a look at this session here, and I want to try to walk you through this briefly. Now, I also have a universal audio playlist on my YouTube channel where I talk about all the different hardware that that universal audio has to offer as of about a year ago. It's always changing, but all the material in that playlist is absolutely relevant to this, and I'll put this video in that playlist as well. And I also do a bunch of plugin reviews as well. So if you're a new person to universal audio, after you get done watching this video, go check out the playlist called Universal Audio Series and watch the first episode where I go over the all the hardware stuff. Okay, so I won't go over all of that today. I'm just going to show you my system and take you through a couple of the plugins. So we have an empty session here of, what is it, 15 tracks, audio tracks, and then we have a bunch of buses and such. There's no plugins with the exception of a couple of utility plugins on the master bus. Don't worry about that. Now, when you first get your universal audio system, you're going to download this as part of the software, this little performance meter or DSP usage meter, which is very similar to the performance meter in, let me make sure this is on top, in Studio One here. If you have a performance monitor here where it shows you how your CPU is doing as you're adding plugins and virtual instruments, well, this little DSP program, little monitor meter here acts in the same way, and you'll see that in a few seconds. Okay, so if I were to click on this little button here, UAD2, now I have 4 satellite systems, Thunderbolt satellite systems. You can go watch the video that I did about 3 or 4 days ago showing a sale that's going over at sweetwater.com, and I show you a picture of the satellite system. You can check that out as well. But if you want to go to Universal Audio or uaaudio.com, you can check out all the hardware they have on their website as well. But I have 4 of these units. When you open up this thing, go to the system info, you'll see here that I have, and here's a picture of it here, an icon. I have a quad unit, which has 4 DSP chips in it. I also have an octo unit, which has 8 DSP chips. Okay, it's like 2 quads stacked together. And then I also have a second quad unit and a second octo unit. So I have 2 octos and 2 quads for a total of, what, 8, 16, and 8 would be 24 DSP chips. Now you daisy chain these together using a Thunderbolt cable. So there's 4 kind of plugged in together, and then from there into my Mac Pro with 1 Thunderbolt cable. Okay, you can hook up to 4 of these units together. Now I have 4. So if you wanted even a larger system, you'd have to have 4 octos, and that would give you 32 DSP chips. I don't think you can go on beyond 4, at least at this time, but you can always check with the Universal Audio website to be sure. But this is a high-powered system. Okay, so the question always is from people, oh my goodness, do I have to buy 4 of these things to have a massive system? Because each one of these, a quad runs about $700 US, an octo runs about $1,000 US at the recording of this video. And they're always putting on specials and those kinds of things. But that's what's going on with that. So do you need this big of a system? Well, no, you don't. But the question is, well, how many plugins can I put on if I just bought myself, say, a quad unit? how many plugins can I put in my session before I run out of DSP power and have to either buy a second system or then use my universal audio plugins along with some native plugins to kind of spread the workload across the computer? And that's a great question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn these on and off with this power button. I'm going to leave the first quad running and I'm going to turn off the other three. So we're only dealing with one quad unit. Now next to this, you can see we have the 4 DSP chips. Okay, in a quad, there's 4 DSP chips, and it shows you how much load is on the DSP chip at this time. Now right now, there's only 3.5% of a load because I do have, this is part of my template, this universal audio plugin here. And I'll get rid of that, and you can see that the DSP went away. So right now there are no plugins. So how many plugins can you use? That's what you want to know. Well, that really depends now. It all really depends on the plugin itself, and let me explain. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of minimize this, okay, and we'll keep this up on top here. And I'll go to my browser. Now, the biggest thing with universal audio as far as DSP usage, as far as which ones are the more heavily will tax the DSP chips, are the channel strips, the SSL, the Neve, the API, also things like the Ocean Way, which I'll show you in a second. Those are massive DSP resources that it takes to run some of those plugins. So what that means is you're going to be able to put fewer instances of those particular plugins in your session. However, on the flip side, things like the 1176, the LA2A, the Pultec, the Fairchild, those use a lot less DSP and you can use many more of them. So let me show you. So for example, this API channel strip here, the Vision channel strip, I'm just going to drop one on the kick drum track here. Okay, here it is right here. Now, as soon as I put that one plugin on here, you can see we're using 1%. If I open this back up again, go to our system info, you'll see that we're running 24% DSP on the first DSP chip. Okay, so it's taking up a quarter of one DSP chip, just one of these plugins. Okay, so now you say, well, how many can I put on? Well, let's see before you start to run out. And we'll get a little message that'll pop up on the screen when we're about to run out. So can we run, let's say, 5 of them? If I were to put 5 of those across each one of my tracks, and these are the mono versions, you can see we're up at 5%. And if I were to open this up and look at our system info, you can see that we're running almost 50% across 2 of the chips, 24% across the 3rd chip, and nothing on the 4th chip. So we can put some more of these. So let's say we wanted to run, I don't know, let's say 12. Say we wanted to run 12 of these, one across each track. What would that do? You can see now we're up at 12% usage, okay? And if we were to open this up again and go to our system info, you can see how it's spread across 73% on 3 of the chips. On all 4 chips have 73%. Okay, so we're not going to be able to put many more of these plugins on this just one quad unit because these channel strips take up a lot of space. And so if we were to put, let's say, another 2 or 3, would we get a message saying that we can't use them all? Here we are. So this is what happens when you exceed it. One or more of the UAD plugins have been disabled because we've exceeded the load on that particular quad unit. Okay, so we can hit OK. And if I were to, now you say, well, this only says it's 12%. It only says it's 12% because I have 4 units hooked together, even though 3 of them are turned off. Okay, that's why it does that. So you gotta it's a little misleading. So when you go into the system info and you look at the hardware that we have turned on, you can see we have 73%. So it's turning off one of these. It's not allowing us to go beyond that. Okay, now how many do I need to take off? Let's take off a couple of these and see if we can use, 12, 13 of these things. Let me look. So if I remove these, I were to open one up. Okay, now we're okay. Now we're able to use them. Okay, so we're able to put 13 of those. So what that means is on one quad, you could put 13 of the Vision channel strips on there. If you had a session that was 20, 30, 40 tracks deep and you wanted to put one of these channel strips on every one of your tracks, you wouldn't be able to do it with a quad unit. Okay, it doesn't have enough DSP in it. Okay, that's where you would need a 2nd, 3rd, or even in my case, a 4th unit where you can now daisy chain these things together to give you more DSP power to enable you to do something like that. But the channel strips, again, they take up a lot of DSP. What if I were to get rid of these? And I want to show you, if you wanted to put things like, say, LA2A's 1176 Fairchilds, they have a lot less DSP. Now, the reason why the channel strips have more DSP on them, the API that we just looked at, which let me drop this back on here again. I'll drop it on one track again. The Neve, the SSL, they all take about the same amount of DSP. Now, one of the reasons why they take so much DSP power is because you really have like 3 or 4 plugins in this one channel strip, right? You have a preamp plugin, you have a filtering section, you have a gate, you have a compressor, and you have an EQ. Okay. Also, the new channel strips that have been released over the last couple of years, there's a lot more detailed modeling with these things where they also model the input and output transformers. So it takes a lot more resources, okay? So this is like 3 or 4 plugins all wrapped up into one. Where conversely, something like, let's say, an 1176, which is a commonly used compressor, right? Let's put that on our kick drum track. You can see that only takes 1%, right? If I go over to my system info, this is really only taking 13% of my quad unit. Remember, the quad unit's the only unit that's on. So you say, well, how many of those can you put on? Can you put, 15, 20 of these? Yeah, I think you probably can on a quad unit. Let's see. Okay, we didn't get a message, so I got 15 of them on here now. Okay, 15 1176s, we're only using 55% of our quad DSP power. Okay, so we could probably put on another 15, which means you could probably put 30 plugins on this one quad unit. If you dropped in, let's say, a few LA2As, let's see what that does. And let's put like 5 or 6 of these on here. Okay, so we're doing okay with the LA2. Now let's say we just, I don't know, throw a couple of pull techs. That's another one that I use quite a bit. I don't use as many of them, but I'm just trying to demonstrate for you how many plugins you can use depending on the system that you buy, right? So if we have a quad unit, okay, so here we go. So now we're getting a message saying we're running out of DSP, okay? So you can see it's disabled. The last one I put on is disabled. Okay, so we can't run quite that many. We can run, if I were to take a couple of them off, okay, we should be okay now. Oh no, it's still disabled. It may be still running a little hot here. The pull tech takes a little bit more DSP than the LA2s and the 1176s. Okay, so this one's okay. You can see it's not disabled. So on this one quad unit, we're running, let's see, we have 15 tracks times 2 layers of plugins. That's, what do we got? 15, 30, 27, about 28 plugins we have on this session. Right now, we have 1176's pull techs and some LA2As. And we're running at about 90% almost across the board on the 4 DSP chips. Okay, so it really is dependent on which plugins you use. Now, if you're going to use, I would never use, 15 LA2As or 15 1176 in my session, but you can if you want to. I'd probably use 3 or 4 of them. So on a quad unit, if you're only going to use a couple of channel strips, maybe 2 or 3 of the 1176s, some LA2As, maybe a few tape machines, you're going to be just fine. But just keep in mind that you're limited to the DSP. And again, you can see it right here, the 4 DSP chips. And as you put the plugins on there, right now we're running 25 plugins. We're running at about 90% almost across the board. Okay, so that's where we're pretty much capped out. So about 20, you can run about 20 to 30 plugins, let's say, depending on which ones you use. Okay, now let's turn on let's turn on one of the, we have one quad unit here. Now, if we doubled up the quad, let's turn on my other quads. Now I have 2 of them running. I think this will allow me to do this without having to reset everything. Let's see. So if I wanted to put those pull techs on here, will it let me do it? Yep, it's going to let me do it now because I turned on the second quad unit. So having 2 quads is like having 1 octo, right? 8 DSP chips. And look at, I could double up pretty much, right? Here's our 15 tracks down here. And let's put all those on here. Let's put the rest of the pull techs on here. Okay, so now we're running, let's see how many plugins we're running. If we go back to our system info, we're running 25 on the first one. We're running 17 plugins on the second one. We're running at about 40% on the first 2 DSP chips, 36% and 0 on the fourth one. So we could still put more plugins on here. So let's say now we wanted to put a couple of channel strips. Let's take, or a couple of tape machines. Like the Studer tape is another thing that I use an awful lot. This is something you'd probably put a lot of, you might put a lot of instances across your tracks. Where are they here? Here we go, Studer. So let's put a couple of the multi-track tape machines. Let's see how many of these we can put on. These take up a little more DSP than the LA2. But let's see, we could put 1, 2. Let's see how many of these we can drop on here. Can we put 8 of them on here? 8 or 10? Let's see. Yep, we could put that many. Let's see. We're going to put another couple here. Let's see how many more we can do. Okay, we're still cranking now, right? Okay, so we're up at around, let's see, on our second UAD quad here, we're still only running around 53, 54%. So we could even put more Studer tape machines on here if we chose to. Okay, so we got now Studer tapes on all 15 tracks. So we have 15 times 4. We have 60 plugins across all of these with 2 quad units, okay, which is like 1 octo. And we still have a little bit of room to spare on that second device. Not much, a little bit. Okay, so that gives you kind of a feel for how many we could put on with 2 quad units. Okay, now again, I'll keep saying it. It depends on the plugin. I'm not going to show you every single plugin and which ones have more DSP than the others. The channel strips have a lot of heavy DSP. The Ocean Way Studios is a really big one too. That's even bigger than the channel strips. But most of the compressors, the Pultecs, the LA2s, the 1176s, the Studer tape machine, most of those take up a lot less DSP where you can use them. You can see how many we can use in a session, and you have 2 quads going here. Now let's put a couple of the reverbs. I think once we put this pure plate reverb, it might crap out on us. No, we could put one of them on there. This is on a stereo track. Now a couple of the new plate reverbs, pure plate, which is a really nice plugin. So again, we got 4 instances of the plate, and we're still running okay with 2 quads or the equivalent to 1 octo unit. Here's our second quad. We're running right here. We are. We're getting around 90% now, so we're not going to be able to put much more than that. But we have a total of what? 64 plugins. Okay, so now what if I turned on, let's just go full bore now just to show you. Now if I wanted to put on my other 2 octos, okay, so now this is doubling this times 2. So now I have two quads and 2 octos running. How many plugins can you run? You can see in total we're only taking up about 30% of my total DSP. So now what if I drop some channel strips on there? Let's go to the Neve. Let's just drop a Neve on here. Let's see how many Neves we can get on here. Again, this is a 15-track session. We have 60 plugins right now. Okay, so what we're going to do, let me just close this and I'll do a copy-paste. Let's see, can we put 15 of them on? We should be able to. Let's see. This one chews up a lot of DSP, though, I'll tell you. But there it goes. We're at 60% of the total system. Let me save this. And we're running 15 channel strips, 15 tape machines, a combination of 15 Pultecs and LA2s, and 15 1176s. And as you can see, my total system, we're only a little over halfway. Okay, now let's see if I wanted to, now let's drop like an Ocean Way. The Ocean Way, I love using that plugin. I only usually use 1 or 2 instances of this because it's it's a DSP hog for sure. So I'm going to drop one of those on a stereo track just to see what happens. Okay, so I can put this one on here. And it didn't go up too much, so I think we're doing okay. I could probably put one more. This is one of those plugins where I use it as a reverb, where I send stuff to it. So I put it on a stereo track, and I'll send my groupings of instruments to it. So I don't use a lot of them. But this also can be used in a remic mode where you put it on as an insert. Okay, and if you're going to do that on several different tracks, this will chew up your DSP very, very quickly. Let me try to put another one on and see what happens. I might be able to. Okay, I could put 2 of them. But now you see we're running around 61%. Let's take a look at our system info. So the first quad is completely just about maxed out. The first octo is about halfway being used. The second quad is almost maxed out, and the second octo is only halfway being used. Okay, so my total is about 61% of my total DSP available is being used. Okay, we got 2 instances of the Ocean Way. Let's put a third one on. Let's see what happens. We could probably put a third and a fourth because I only have, oh no, there it is. So there we go. So we can only do 2. The third one's going to be disabled because it's too much. Okay, so this is going to take up between 25 and 30%, the Ocean Way by itself. So keep that in mind. So again, with a big system like I have, you can't use lots of instances of the Ocean Way unless you're not going to use all these other UAD plugins. Okay, make sense? But in a system this big, you can run, let's see, we have 15 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What's that? 15, 30, 45, 60, 75. What are we running? 90 plugins. Plus we have some plugins on our buses here. 92, 94, 96 plugins we're running. And I could put more as far as the ones that don't take up as much DSP. I could put more Pultecs. I could put more LA2s, 1176s, Fairchilds. Those are not so bad. It's the larger ones. So what does that all mean at the end of the day for you? Well, what that means is if you're getting into universal audio, you got to kind of think a little bit ahead of maybe where you are today. And I tell everyone, if you're going to get into this, this is an investment, okay? This is something you're going to have your lifetime. I've been using UAD plugins for over 10 years. I love them. Start off with as big of a system as you can afford. You know, start off with a quad. Get your feet wet with the plugins. You're not going to be able to use all the channel strips across 15 tracks. That's okay. Maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe you can just send all your drums, for example, to a drum bus and put the one channel strip on the bus. That's one way to kind of, save some DSP power. You don't have to put a channel strip across all your tracks. There's other ways you can do things with buses and VCAs where you can group things together and use fewer plugins. Once you get into this for a bit and you feel like you want the system to grow, what's great about this system is that you can daisy chain up to 4 of these together. So I didn't go out and buy all my satellite systems all at once. I did this over the course of several years. And there's always sales going on at places like Sweetwater and Musician's Friends, and there's always sales on plugins at Universal Audio. So you can wait for the right time of year, usually around Black Friday, those kinds of things, and you pick one up on a good deal, and you can expand your system. Okay, so that is, hopefully, I hope that answers some of the questions because I get that question an awful lot. So start with a system like a quad unit. Realize that you're going to be able to put quite a few plugins on with a quad, depending on the plugins you're using. And as you get more into the more heavily intense DSP plugins like channel strips and like Ocean Way and those kinds of things, you're going to need a larger system. And it's scalable. So if you have any questions at all, leave a comment below. I'll be more than happy to help you. And that's it for now. So go check out all the other videos in the playlist for Universal Audio. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. And until the next video, this has been Dave with Home Recording Made Easy and LearningToMix.com. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for joining me and take care.